Welcome to the episode of the Wars of India.
Okay, think about this. One day, just one battle, completely changing the path of history for, well, centuries. That's what we're diving into today. The Second Battle of Tarain, 1192 CE.
Yeah, and this wasn't their first clash, was it? It was the big rematch. Muhammad Ghori versus Prithviraj Chauhan, round 2, just a year after the first fight.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've been digging through, quite a bit of material, historical accounts, chronicles, even some of the more legendary stuff. They all paint a picture of the strategies, the fallout, everything.
And our mission, really, is to unpack all that with you. We want to pull out the key nuggets, figure out why this battle was so different from the first one, and really grasp its huge impact on the Indian subcontinent.
It's about cutting through all the noise to find those genuine turning points. So welcome. We're excited to explore the Second Battle of Tarain together.
Right, so to get the second battle, you really have to flash back to the first one, 1191. Prithviraj Chauhan, his forces won pretty decisively. Ghori's army was routed.
Ghori himself was wounded, had to retreat. A major setback.
Huge. But that loss, it didn't seem to discourage him. If anything, it ignited this fierce drive for revenge, but also for expansion. The sources are pretty clear he didn't just sit around for that year.
No, sounds like he used that time very strategically.
Absolutely. He basically overhauled his army. Reports emphasize strengthening the cavalry, especially those mounted archers, and really drilling discipline into his troops. He learned some hard lessons, clearly.
And Prithviraj, what was happening on his side during that year? What did the accounts suggest?
Well, that's interesting. Some narratives point towards maybe a bit of overconfidence after that first big win. Understandable perhaps.
Sure.
He apparently tried to get other Rajput kingdoms on board, build alliances, but it seems like internal rivalries really got in the way.
So that unity wasn't quite there among the Rajput rulers.
That's a theme that definitely comes up in some records. And maybe connected to that, some sources claim he kind of neglected shoring up his frontiers, perhaps didn't expect Ghori back so soon or so strong.
Underestimated him, perhaps.
Could be. Meanwhile, Ghori is preparing his comeback. He moves first by retaking the fort at Bathinda, a really strategic spot the Rajputs had captured after the first battle.
Right. Getting a foothold.
Exactly. A forward base. And from there, he apparently sends an ultimatum. Submit. Prithviraj, of course, refuses. And, well, the stage is set. Tarain again.
Okay, let's picture the forces lining up. What did Ghori bring this time? What do the sources say about his army?
His army, led by Ghori himself, was heavily focused on cavalry. That's the key takeaway. Mobility, skilled mounted archers, that was their big advantage.
Yep.
Now, numbers in these old chronicles, they can be huge, right? Like 120,000.
Always need to take those with a grain of salt.
Definitely. Modern historians are more cautious, but they agree.
Yeah.
It was a significant, well-drilled cavalry force he brought.
And on Prithviraj's side, it was a coalition, wasn't it?
It was. A Rajput confederacy, led by Prithviraj, king of Ajmer and Delhi, but with troops from various allied rulers. Their strength was more in traditional forces, massed infantry, those impressive war elephants, and their own cavalry, too. Again, numbers are probably inflated in the texts, but it was undoubtedly a massive army.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, looking at the accounts. Because Ghori didn't just bring more men, he brought a totally different game plan.
Totally different. His strategy was designed specifically to counter Rajput strengths and exploit their maybe predictable tactics. One thing mentioned is deception. Reports say he might have pretended to want to negotiate, maybe ask for a truce right before.
Just to get them to relax their guard a little. Bit of psychological warfare.
Seems like it. And then, bam! Surprise attack. The Ghurids hit them at dawn. This was crucial because the Rajput military tradition generally didn't favor night attacks or surprise assaults like this. It caught them off balance.
Okay, so deception, surprise. What else was in his playbook?
He deliberately avoided a direct head-on clash at first. He knew the Rajputs were powerful in that kind of melee. Instead, he used his mobile cavalry, those mounted archers, to just constantly harass their flanks and rear.
Circling, firing arrows, keeping them off balance. I think I read about specific units, maybe 4 groups of light cavalry, like 10,000 archers.
Yeah, that specific detail pops up in some narratives. Their job wasn't to break the line, but to provoke, disrupt, wear them down from the sides and back.
And then comes the tactic that everyone talks about with this battle, the feigned retreat.
Ah, yes, this is the absolute masterstroke according to the sources. The Ghurid light cavalry would charge in, let loose a volley of arrows, and then suddenly turn and pretend to flee like they were broken.
And the Rajputs, being valiant warriors, would naturally think they're running, and give chase.
Exactly. It's the classic warrior instinct. But chasing them pulled Rajput soldiers out of their tight formations, stretched their lines, made them disorganized, and tired them out, chasing these seemingly retreating horsemen.
So they'd chase, the Ghurids would pull away, maybe regroup just out of reach, turn, fire again, and then run again.
You got it, that cycle. It just ground them down, pulled them apart. And once the Rajput army was sufficiently scattered, disorganized, exhausted from this chase, that's when Ghori unleashed his trump card.
The heavy cavalry reserve.
His elite, fresh, heavy cavalry charged right into the tired, disordered Rajput ranks.
Wow. Hitting a fatigued, broken formation with a disciplined, heavy charge, that must have been absolutely brutal.
The accounts suggest it was devastating. Now, the Rajput soldiers, they fought incredibly bravely. Some sources say they initially pushed back the Ghurid cavalry even after the dawn surprise, but they kept falling for the feigned retreat. Chasing into those traps just decimated them. The battle raged, but Ghori's tactics just proved too much. It ended in a rout.
What do we know about the cost, the casualties?
The loss of life was clearly immense, especially on the Rajput side. Getting precise numbers from medieval sources is always tricky, but the descriptions of the defeat point to very heavy casualties.
And Prithviraj Chauhan himself, his fate is where the stories really diverge, right? History versus legend.
Big time. The historical chronicles give us a couple of main versions. One says he was captured on the battlefield and executed pretty much straight away.
Okay.
Another suggests he was taken prisoner to Ajmer. Maybe Ghori thought about making him a vassal ruler initially. But then, according to this version, Prithviraj tried to rebel or conspire against Ghori, and then he was executed for treason.
Right, the more political accounts. And then there's the really famous story.
The Prithviraj Raso, the epic poem. That's a much more, let's say, dramatic and romantic telling. He's taken to Ghazni, he's blinded, but then uses his incredible archery skill, guided just by sound, to shoot and kill Ghori before taking his own life. It's an amazing story, very powerful culturally.
But not necessarily what historians think actually happened.
Generally, no. Historical analysis leans towards the accounts of his capture and execution closer to the battlefield in India. But the legend is incredibly persistent and important in its own right.
Okay, so regardless of exactly how Prithviraj met his end, the sources are unanimous on this. The result of the battle was a massive, massive turning point.
Undeniably, a watershed moment. This defeat crushed Rajput supremacy in North India. Resistance continued in places, sure, but their overall dominance was broken.
And this threw the doors open for what came next, didn't it? The establishment of foreign rule.
Precisely. Muhammad Ghori left his most trusted general, Qutbuddin Aibak, in charge as governor. Aibak didn't waste time. He captured key cities like Delhi and Ajmer, consolidated Ghurid power, and started expanding across the northern plains.
And Aibak is the one who formally establishes the Delhi Sultanate later on.
That's right. This victory at Tarain directly paved the way. A few years later, in 1206, Aibak declares the Delhi Sultanate, kicking off centuries of Muslim dynastic rule in India.
So the long-term significance is just enormous. Political, social, cultural shifts.
Absolutely massive. It set in motion changes that reshaped the subcontinent for hundreds of years, introducing new ruling elites, new cultural interactions, changing the whole power dynamic.
Okay, let's try and boil it down then. Looking across the accounts, why the dramatic turnaround? Why did Prithviraj and the Rajputs, winners in 1191, face such a crushing defeat in 1192? What are the key factors?
Well, number one has to be Ghori's strategy. It was just far superior this time. The deception, the surprise attack, the brilliant use of those mounted archers, and of course, the killer tactic, the feigned retreat.
He adapted, he learned, he didn't just try the same thing again.
Exactly. Then you have the issue, highlighted in some sources, of Rajput disunity. Those internal rivalries we mentioned likely meant they couldn't field a truly cohesive force or maybe agree on a unified strategy to counter Ghori's new approach.
A single adaptable command might have responded differently.
Possibly. There's also that hint of underestimation, maybe overconfidence on the Rajput side after the first victory. Did they fully appreciate Ghori's determination or the extent of his military reforms? Maybe not.
And their own tactics, the traditional reliance on elephants and infantry charges, seemed less effective against Ghori's mobile, harassing cavalry tactics. Those traditional strengths were vulnerable to being disorganized before the main clash even happened.
Right, and finally, it seems like they didn't really capitalize on that year between battles, didn't fully consolidate or prepare for a determined counteroffensive.
That seems to be part of the picture, too. It really reads like a case study in the sources. Military innovation versus tradition, psychology, strategy, unity. or lack thereof, all converging at Tarain.
So bringing it back to today, why should this battle from way back in 1192 matter to you listening now?
Well, I think what really jumps out from these accounts is this powerful lesson about adaptation. How understanding your opponent, understanding psychology, using strategy, discipline, unity, how those things can completely overturn perceived strengths or past victories.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a list of kings and dates, is it? It's about understanding why things happened the way they did, the ripple effects of decisions and tactics. Exactly. Tarain II wasn't just a fight won or lost. It fundamentally shifted the historical trajectory of a huge part of the world. It triggered centuries of change.
It really underlines how political structures, cultural landscapes, they can be reshaped by events on a single day, driven by strategy and human factors.
It sets so much in motion.
So the big takeaway from digging into these sources is pretty stark. Tarain II was way more than just a battle. It was a moment of profound transformation. We hope this deep dive has helped unpack how and why that massive shift happened based on what the records tell us.
And it leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? Consider this. How different might the history of the Indian subcontinent look if somehow the Rajput rulers had overcome those rivalries, if they'd fully anticipated Ghori's tactical evolution?
Or think about other points in history. Where else have you seen adaptation, or the failure to adapt, prove absolutely decisive? Where else was understanding the opponent's mindset the key that unlocked victory? Something to ponder.